Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling, and should we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today? Relaxing as per usual, post D&D session. Pretty good session, I would say. This was much more of a transitionary, I suppose, session, and the rare combat session for this group. I feel like I should talk about the non-D&D things first, because then the rest of it will be about D&D. Because the non-D&D thing I was going to talk about was I saw that Natural Habitats has dubbed some of their shorts in other languages, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I think it's always very fun to see them in other languages, especially as, I'm pretty good at Mandarin. I'd hesitate to say fluent, and I'm conversational at Japanese, so I can understand it. But hold on. Good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow is 10:56 p.m. on Friday, April 11th, 2025. So it gives an interesting sort of thing where, I can watch it fine in Mandarin and Japanese, and it's the same content. You just get a different perspective. I think it's interesting to see the character's voice in a different way, because then each language gives us a different impression. Mainly because the voice actors are different. In one of them, one of the characters is a young child, and she legit sounds very young, but then in the dub she sounds considerably older, or something like that, or one of them has a much deeper voice in it. So I've been watching a few of them in Chinese and Japanese. I'd say on the whole it's fine, they're pretty okay. I would say the translations do seem quite literal at sometimes, sort of devoid of context in a sense. I will say it sounds natural. I think the translation sort of leaves a little bit to be desired in some of them. Most of them, the point gets across. Sometimes, the jokes don't translate. The Mazeltov joke in the Axolotl one did not translate at all to Chinese or Japanese. Kind of you can get the context of it, but it doesn't. Well, unless they do. I don't actually know what the Chinese translation of Mazeltov is, but Zhu Haiyun is just sort of good luck, I believe. I don't know if that's also what they say. But yeah. And the Japanese one, it just goes yatta, which is, obviously just yeah, right, rather than Mazeltov. But so that joke's kind of lost. But what jokes aren't lost in translation? I will say the worst one though is definitely the Chinese translation of the Quokka one, where the English is put your hands up and nobody, or no, just hand over everything and nobody has to get, and then there's a pause, hurt, as they see the baby is tossed into their arms. But the Chinese one translates into 谁也别得到我受伤了 pause 我受伤了 which if you don't know Chinese, I would translate as no one else can get it, I'm hurt, I've hurt myself. Which you can see how it happened is because they thought they were two separate sentences, as in, hand it over and no one has to get hurt, no one has to get, which was translated as no one can get it, and then hurt translated to I'm hurt. So it did not translate very well in Chinese in that one. It was very, very funny because I did listen to it and I went, what? I was like, what does this mean? 谁也别得到我受伤了 It's just it's so dramatically said as well. It's saying no one can get it, I'm hurting. That's probably how I would translate the vibes of it. But not say that translation is the easy job. I could not do translation. There's so much nuance between languages, which makes it really, really difficult to properly get the nuance across. Inside jokes, context, different impressions, connotations. But on the whole, I think they're pretty decent. It's just this one definitely was a miss, or didn't really hold its meaning. But that's fine. I'm super, super down with them translating to different languages and expanding outwards my audience, because I love Natural Habitat shorts. And I think it's going to be. I'm now just going to continuously quote it in other languages now. Now it doesn't just have to be English. Where it's just Michael, you always do this. You don't even like salads. Why did you order a salad? I love that one. What other one do I like? I don't know. I want to do the Scream one, but I can't do the Scream. What does blue mean? What does blue mean? I love a Chinese koala as well when he orders for salad. The English one is also really good, but the Chinese one is also fantastic. Also the kaku one in Japanese. Once you get into, was it? Kimi no pancake wa boku no da. I love that as well. Anyway, sorry. Yes, D&D talk. That's just what I want to say. I think it's cool. Animal Shorts is in other languages, even if some of them have not been translated perfectly. But yeah, so D&D session. It was the focus was sort of what I thought was going to be like. It was going to be travel. So of course some random encounters, which as a DM, like I feel like random encounters, you know, you can have a random encounter tables and you can just sort of do weird things with it. But the way I do it is, you know, every single thing which happens in the story has some sort of relevance to a player, is how I end up doing things. Mainly because I kind of want to do things like that. I feel that's like, I don't, for one, want to lead my players down like a sort of red herring where it's like, this has no bearing whatsoever, this is just meaningless. Unless it's very, very clearly something like that. Like, for example, one of them, like, they had like a fairground, basically, a sort of like festival, where it's like very, very clearly we're in an epilogue, sort of like, of Act 1. This is not going to have much bearing on the plot. So the random encounters I try to sort of give a small perspective into something, or it either like gives a different view, not gives a viewpoint, but gives something which adds flavour to the overarching narrative or overarching story. This one more so than the others, it was like their third encounter they've had of like a very similar, very strange nature. I don't necessarily expect them to be able to find information from it, I don't necessarily expect them to do stuff, but I do want it to sort of build up that feeling of a world of like, yes, there is this stuff happening, this is an ongoing threat or ongoing mystery, rather than it just being, you know, like it's sort of like a gentle reminder. Not that I think my players have forgotten or anything, but it's hard to necessarily feel it if I bring it up once and then, oh, I only bring it up when the big plot thing happens. It's like gentle sort of reminders of like a world that they're living in. But the second part of it, which I thought might have been like, depending how quickly they resolved it, I don't know, was a battle. But I wanted to do a bit more of an interesting battle, because I think this group certainly leans more to the sort of like puzzle solving style of battle, rather than necessarily the like, I want to feel powerful sort of battle. But I'll pull behind the DM curtain a little bit, because one of the players does like combat. So it's a sort of thing when the other two players, like one is sort of like on it, the other's not that fond of it. So it's sort of like, okay, let's try and make a combat encounter which can satisfy those interesting points. So it needs to make one player feel pretty strong, and then the other players can have like interesting ways to accomplish similar goals, which doesn't necessarily have to be straight up fight. So what I did was basically, it's a plot point for one of our characters. They run into, basically, the long and short of it is their family quote not found family, but more like the ones that we grew up with have, you know, are trying to sort of like murder them in a sense. But this one was an explosives expert, so I was like, okay, let's have this something interesting, let's have it, she has booby trapped basically the entire battleground area. And she still holds a threat, like she still has like ranged chip damage, which she can do, and sort of just like, she like can lob bombs essentially, which encourages them to spread out. But the thing is, since they're basically going through a minefield, my thought as well is that they want to sort of stick together, because if they spread out, that just increases the chances of them hitting a load of different mines. So they have to have a sort of balance there, where it's like, do they stay together? Do they spread out? How? And then also the overarching puzzle element of this battle is, how can we circumvent these bombs and stuff in the way? How can we do something such that we can reach the opponent who is just lobbying stuff from super far away? So this was quite a homebrew battle. I gave her like some very custom things, because she was from 300 feet away. I basically reflavored her Eldritch Blast. She had like a spell sniper sort of Eldritch Blast, but I also made it do like splash damage essentially, which are those mini bombs that she was throwing. And I basically put some things in to make it be like, okay, well, the difficulty is not necessarily the actual battle itself. She's not that strong in close combat or anything. I mean, it's 1 turn versus like 7 of a player's turns or whatever. But she's not meant to be that strong. The difficulty is the fact that she's now in her environment. How can you circumvent it? And my players actually did a lot of very interesting things. I also had them roll a D100 near the beginning to determine like if there's any modifiers in this fight. And one of the modifiers was basically, the long and short of it, is one of their allies could have turned against them. But honestly, my players just played the fight really well, to be honest. So the one of their allies turning against them, it would have been from like a demonic possession effect. But like as I started sort of like doing narrative things of leading into it, one of my players did a very great prediction and cast protect from good and evil on it, and I was like, oh, I completely forgot this was a spell. And what I thought it did was it basically gave disadvantage to any of that type of creature attacking them. Turns out it also stops possession, and I was like, oh wow, okay, that is pretty good in this case. That basically completely nullifies that encounter. I was like, all right, well, okay, it was only the modifier, that's not the main encounter, that's fine as well. But then my players did like some very nice usage of abilities. Like one of the players grabbed the melee fighter and basically just seeing that she has like decent range, she dimension doored and dropped him from like 60 feet above, and he's a monk, so he didn't take falling damage, so he could like be safely, she can safely be from a distance, he can start doing damage immediately. The other player cast jump on the DMPC and the other DMPC, so it's more like a DMPC and an NPC. So one of the players also cast jump on that NPC, and the DMPC like teleported him forwards, so then he just like closed the gap so quickly to also help start doing damage. And I was like, well, okay, that's pretty good. That player also summoned familiars, flock of familiars, and got them to basically charge a path through, and with them taking the explosions and the damage, and they followed on behind. And I was like, that's very clever as well, I didn't even think about that. So despite the fact there's that entire minefield surrounding them, because I expected them maybe they'd like try and split up, they'd like hide behind the walls and that sort of thing, they basically just ran through my puzzle and were like, hey, you know what, this is your puzzle, this might be how the difficult way you want us to solve it, then we're gonna solve it this way. And I was like, wow, okay, just fair play to you. Like, I'm not even going to be mad, and I'm not obviously going to be mad. I will choose to be impressed instead, where I'm just like, as a DM, I want this to happen. I want to give you an interesting situation, and you show me, hey, I know my stuff well enough in this game, this is my interesting solution, which will work. And I was like, damn. There's also this really cool idea of using locate object as basically like a radar ping every single time. I don't know if it would actually work like that, but I just made a call being like, okay, like at the start of each turn, you'll get the radar ping, which was also a really cool idea. Oh, and also one of them landed command onto the enemy and said a very great word. Like, the first word they wanted to say was detonate, and I was like, that's going to be really bad. That's going to basically be a nuke dropping on this character, because this character has a huge amount of bombs on them. But then they said disarm, and I was like, perfect word, perfect word, as the character in that time just disarms himself and all the bombs on them. Because this character had a mechanic. This is like, you see the layers and layers stacked up on here. This is like how I wanted the combat player to feel strong, of basically it's sort of like a twist on, I think, the burning mechanic from like the Ramirez or something, which was basically every time a melee hit lands, they take a certain amount of retaliatory fire damage, which I like the concept of, but the thing I didn't like about it, which is the fact it's guaranteed. So it means basically you have to fight this enemy in range, which is nice in some aspects, but it feels really bad as a martial character if you don't have good range options. Which ended up happening against one of the characters. The character just tanked the damage because he has a lot of health, but I don't think it would have worked in this case. So I said, okay, well, what makes sense is that the bombs are like dex saves, right? Why wouldn't it make sense that this character just has a load of bombs on him every time that she gets attacked and takes damage, instead of firing back with fire, a mini bomb goes off. So the character has to roll a load of dex saves. And yes, I did know that this character is pretty good at dex saves. So I was like, it will help feel really strong, where you're just like going in there and like you're basically dodging all the retaliatory damage. There's still some legitimate threats. Like, I did want it to make sure that there could be like, obviously I didn't want it just to be like an absolute rollover. So the bombs, if they do hit, do a lot of damage, and she has a lot of like big AoE explosions. And I also did a mechanic where when she got to half health, her next turn would be this huge like wave, push fire wave from underneath, which was a strength save, not a dex save, just to sort of keep him on his toes, you know. But yeah, like I fully expected him to be very good at dodging things. I completely forgot about dexterity. Evasion, which means it completely nullifies the damage, and I was like, oh, okay, that's perhaps a bit better than I expected. But it ended up like balancing out pretty well, because of the other parts of the combat sort of being nullified as well. But yeah, I expected them to sort of like move together as a group, carefully and slowly, and then once they get there, they just spring load a load of damage. They see that ranged attacks are pretty good, because they don't, well, they won't be in range of the bombs, so I expected one of the players to keep the distance and then the bomb wouldn't hit. He never moved away, despite the fact he had extra range, but whatever. Like, that's not my issue, I suppose, because it ended up working out. Like, it got a fantastic moment where he basically dodged a huge amount of explosives, only getting taken down right at the end. No joke, almost to himself. But yeah, that's basically, if you want to peek behind the DM curtain, that's how I built that encounter. I wanted it that they would have to make interesting choices. Some of the interesting choices didn't come out, but that's because they came up with interesting solutions instead. And it's hard, I think, especially as I get higher and higher level, to be able to nullify all sort of solutions. Like, if I put a big distance through, dimension door teleportations will all immediately close that distance. Okay, so I guess I had to put like an anti-teleportation field if it's something where that's really important. Or like if I don't want them to fly, I would have to have like really low ceilings or something. Stuff like that. It's hard to take into account every single possibility. But also, I think as a DM, you don't want to. Like, there should be a through line of a strategy they can take, that you can think of to take care of it. And my strategy, I thought, would basically be to slowly sort of close in the distance by hiding, essentially, by being stealthy rather than being aggressive. But they took the aggressive route, and it worked for them perfectly fine, and it was fantastic. Yeah, I think it'll be fun to see, because next session will almost certainly be very, very lore heavy for two of the characters. One of them, of course, through his family member, and the other through the initial motivation of his journey in the first place. But there you go. There's a little bit of encounter design for you from a DM side of me trying to make a combat encounter more interesting than just bam, 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 attack, attack, attack. So there you go for the players who are watching my sort of D&D reviews. That was the aim. It was meant to be a much more tactical needed fight, and yeah, the players proved themselves. They played that incredibly tactically, and I was very impressed. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to round this episode up here. I know, it's not to the level of like a strategy game tactics, but I think it's pretty good for D&D, right? So, I'm going to round this episode off here. If you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.